Hello everyone, welcome to the standard live chat Q&A. My name is Han, I am a politics reporter here. Sitting right next to me is my very good friend and also colleague, Joe Fitz, who's also a politics reporter here. Today we have a very special guest. We're gonna have a lot to talk about. So he's a writer, he's an activist, award-winning journalist, and also a supervisor, elected official here in San Francisco. 2 years ago, he made history as the first candidate to unseat an incumbent elected supervisor representing Sunset District. And then for the past 2 years, he brought night markets to the city. You know, he's largely not very controversial until he introduced Proposition K, which has been making me very busy. So welcome, Supervisor Joel Engardio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, no, we're all going to the Lunar New Year parade tomorrow. Just to start off with a little bit of what's new. Are you excited? What are your plans? What are your usual plans for the Lunar New Year?
Absolutely. It's a really exciting time. My husband is originally from Taiwan, and so he gets to ride with me in our car in the New Year parade. So it's a really special time for him to celebrate and for me to celebrate with him. And also it's fun because, you know, as we're going along the parade route, residents from the Sunset, we can wave and talk to them, and so it's a great experience. So I'm really excited to do it.
I mean, gosh, yeah, an experience that you fought hard for. I mean, there's 3 times that you went up to bat in order to win the supervisor's race, and you got knocked down a few times, but you came right back.
Yeah, perseverance, right? I mean, I was running for office because I really believe in San Francisco, and I know that, you know, there's a lot of potential in this city. We as great as we are, as wonderful San Francisco is, we still haven't realized our full potential, which is amazing, right? So there's a lot more that we can always do to make the city even better, and that's why I ran, because we have things we need to fix, and there's also things that are working that we can make even better.
Well, right, and you know, we are going to talk about some of those more controversial things in a bit, but I thought we might start on something that you ran on, because there is these discussions about your candidacy now and your service to the district now. But you know, you ran on a record of public safety. You ran kind of, you know, being pro-recall of Chesa Boudin, the former district attorney. Do you think things have gotten better? Are things better for District 4 residents in terms of public safety?
Yes, it's always important to know. I used to volunteer for a group called Stop Crime SF, and so one of our jobs, so to speak, was we would organize volunteers to go do court watch and go into courtrooms and take a look at what is happening, what are judges deciding when it comes to cases. You know, are the judges being too lenient? Are they? What is happening with the cases? So we just wanted to. My idea for this was to give information to people so people know what's going on, more transparency about what's happening in the courtrooms. And even journalists would contact us and ask about, well, what did your volunteers hear today in the courtroom? Because, you know, reporters don't have time to visit every case that's happening and always be in the courtroom itself, and it's hard to find the transcripts and whatnot. So that public education was useful because as part of it, it was important to always note what was happening with crime, what was up, what was down. The time that I worked on Stop Crime SF, violent crime was always down. It's at historic lows. It was property crime, it was home break-ins, car burglaries, those were up. So, and those felt very visceral, those felt very personal. If your garage is broken into, your car is broken into. So even if the murder rate is the lowest it's been in 30, 40 years, it still feels like crime is tough when your car is broken into. So it was always important to differentiate. So when you say are things better, the violent crime rate is still very low. So that's always been good. And I think, you know, when it comes to the home break-ins, we are seeing in the last year or so, some of the statistics are trending better, that crime is lower.
They may be trending better, but they're still higher than maybe 4 or 5 years ago, though. I mean, I was just looking before we came in here at the stats for Terraval station, which of course, you know, crosses a few different borders and not just your district, but includes your district.
Right.
And that the property crime rates are higher now by about, I think the property crimes about 50 more year over year, 2024, than 2019, than 2020. They're still high. I mean, what is keeping them high, and the changes that you said would come, I mean, with District Attorney Bodine out, and why has that not solved that problem?
Well, to solve crime, there's like the DA is not the only thing that needs to happen, right? We need policing, we need resources. You mentioned Terraville Station. This station covers the largest geography of any in San Francisco. So it's not just the Sunset District. It has 3 districts in it. So basically, it's everything west of Twin Peaks to the ocean, from Golden Gate Park to Daly City. Huge geography. And at any given night, there might be only 4 or 5 officers to traverse that entire geography. So they're running from hot call to hot call, and it might take 20 minutes to get from the hills of Twin Peaks to the ocean and back and forth. So we have a shortage of officers, as we know, in San Francisco. Around 500 officers we're short. At Terraville Station, 5-6 years ago, they had about 120 or so officers, and now they have about 55. So we're about half of the capacity that we had before. So it's important that we do whatever we can to recruit more officers, and that starts with young people wanting to be police officers. We can throw all the money in the world at it, but if young people don't want to join the force, like, we can't force people to do that. So we need to show that in San Francisco, our police department, as it is a leader in reform, that we respect the policing profession. We want young people to be officers, and it's a good career. And so that's why in my supervisor newsletter, each month I always highlight an officer at the Terraville Station, a younger officer, to kind of showcase this is their life story, this is where they came from, this is why they're an officer, this is their philosophy, just to show that it's a noble profession, and we want to recruit people to do this in San Francisco so we can beef up our staffing numbers.
And I do want to point out, Sunset District, or D4, has a SFPD liaison, right? And that's a unique thing just for you.
Yes.
Is that right?
So that's something that I created. Like, I thought it's very important. Like, public safety is a top issue for the residents in the Sunset. And so Vindy Chan, she works for the police department as a civilian, but she's a liaison with my office. And so she's dedicated to my office and the Sunset. So every day she's out in the field, and she's working with merchants and residents who are victims of crime. She's helping them if they need if they have problems filling out a police report, or any questions that they have. Also, she does a census weekly of any unhoused people in the district, and so that way we know where everyone is, and then we can approach them and offer services and network them with city departments. So she's a really important role, public facing and working, and she's fluent in Cantonese, Mandarin, and English. So she's able to...
Super necessary for the neighborhood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she's able to talk to almost any merchant or resident who has an issue with crime.
Did I tell you I took a Cantonese class for a little bit?
Oh, you did?
Oh,
wow.
I did terribly.
Yeah.
There's like, 7 different tones? I can't get them at all.
Yeah.
And speaking of the unhoused, you co-sponsored this fentanyl legislation that Lurie brought to the board. Mayor Daniel Lurie brought to the Board of Supervisors, recently passed, giving him some powers to circumvent board approvals in order to get fentanyl-related kind of leases and hiring and contracting done faster. Also addresses public safety in a few other areas. But we were talking earlier about cops. You said only 4 or 5 are patrolling the district, the Terraville at any one time. Does the district need to make? Are they making sacrifices in order to supplement what is needed downtown? I mean, he's got a hospitality zone that he just announced, Mayor Lurie. There's more police over in that area. We've got the 6th Street and Stevenson tent, bringing people there for services. I mean, is D4 seeing fewer police on the ground because of that?
It depends on what's happening. So if when the decision was made to flood Union Square, then of course some officers had to move to Union Square. Or if there's a big event like the economic summit with all the nations of the world, so clearly people would have to be deployed for those. And so that's why it's important that and I have to give a shout out to Captain Brian who he's the one who he oversees Terraville Station. He works miracles with the little resource he has. Because even though he only has 55 officers when someone 6 years earlier had 120, he really does a lot with that. So I want to give kudos to that. But also that's why because the resources are so slim, having Vindy Chan, our liaison, helps a lot because she's able to do some administrative work that frees up the existing officers to be out on the beat. She's able to do some interfacing with the public, so the officer doesn't have to do every interaction, right? And then if needed, she can call the officer and he or she can come in. So that's important. And then I fought in the budget to get the retired police officers, the ambassadors, to come to the Sunset. They were not in the Sunset when I took office, and so they're really welcome. And then we also have those are the blue jacket ambassadors, and we have our yellow jacket city employee ambassadors who also are really helpful. So with all that, we're kind of treading above water, so to speak, but we really do need more officers to, at the Terrible Station.
Sure.
Okay. So we're 10 minutes into our chat, and the comments already urging us to get into some hot topics. So let's talk about Great Highway and Proposition K, and also, the latest development, which you're facing a recall attempts right now, right? So I think first, do we have the latest on Great Highway, or is it going to close soon? What's the timeline right now?
So with Great Highway, I think first, we should talk about let's center ourselves on what we're talking about when it comes to Great Highway.
Sure,
right?
please.
Because Great Highway is really 3 sections of road. So you have your southern section, which is south of Sloat, and that part of the road is facing extreme coastal erosion. So that parts of it are literally falling into the ocean. And so that section, regardless of Prop K, was closing anyway. It had already been legislated, mandated by the State Coastal Commission, Board of Supervisors had unanimously voted on that. So just so we know, that's that southern section, right, falling into the ocean. Then we have the middle section. That's between Lincoln and Sloat. That's the 2 miles that Prop K dealt with, and that's the part that has, other than Lincoln and Sloat, there's no on and off ramps or access into the Sunset in that middle section. And then there's the northern section, which Prop K didn't touch. That's the section that connects the Sunset and Richmond neighborhoods between Lincoln and Point Lobos, and access at Fulton and at Balboa, where your Cliff House is, and the 400 space parking lot at the ocean. So all that is
cafe and the old surf shop.
all that is staying the same. None of that is being touched. So everyone can still go around the park and get back and forth between the 2 neighborhoods. So just as a baseline, because a lot of people talk about Great Highway as a singular thing, but it's important to understand the 3 sections that are the Great Highway.
Yeah, Prop K is just shutting down
the middle part, the middle section.
About 2 miles. Yeah.
That's right, because the southern part was closing anyway. Prop K is now a result of that happening, and now Prop K is the middle section. Northern section is staying untouched.
Yeah, so I think a question about that. Even though it's just that 2 mile little stretch, right, as you explained, did you expect this to blow up like this? To become this controversial?
Well, in San Francisco, there's a lot of things are controversial, right? And so, and I respect that people are going to disagree about what to do with our coast and this middle section of this road. I think it's also important to kind of take a step back. And, I know this was controversial, and it's very humbling for me, and I also respect how people are going to disagree on this issue. But moving forward, we have to think about, what are we creating? There is a possibility that we can be creating something quite transformational for not just the Sunset, but San Francisco. I mean, an iconic oceanside park. I mean, it could be as iconic as the Golden Gate Bridge for a tourist who wants to come to San Francisco. And this could be something that's great for the environment, something that multiple generations are going to benefit from, local business can benefit from it. So there are good and positive things that can come from this that I think we need to be mindful of. Our world today, there's so much destruction and strife and negativity and just a lot of bad things happening. And nationally, we're stressed out, and we have a lot of things to fix in San Francisco. So I think it's important when we're talking about this issue, to think about, we are creating something. We are doing something positive. This can be something that can benefit everybody, and traffic can still get where it needs to go. We can still focus on that and have the benefits of this park for all.
So I do wonder, just if you could center people with where we are in this process, what still needs to happen, what's the red tape that still needs to do we still need to go through in order to make this a park, determine the amount of funding needed, all of that? What's the timeline? What are the steps?
Well, the very, very first step is the traffic mitigation. So that's something I'm committed to. I'm working with our new mayor, Daniel Lurie. We're aligned on the same page, not closing any part of a road until we have key traffic mitigation in place.
So that's why you that?
So that's why you're seeing at 41st and Lincoln, you're seeing a traffic signal going up almost in record time. You know, I was told, that takes 18 months or whatever. It's going to take forever, or it's not possible. And so I pushed and pushed, and also then partnered with Mayor Lurie, and you're seeing evidence of a traffic signal within 6 weeks that was said could be either 18 months or longer. So we're doing everything we can to facilitate the traffic flow, to make sure cars can get where they need to go. You're seeing a signal going up at where it used to be a three-way stop sign at Sloat and Skyline. That's really important because that was a big pain point with a three-way stop, and that, with that intersection. 41st and Lincoln was a four-way stop sign, which will now be signalized with a traffic signal. So, and then at Lincoln and Great Highway, that intersection will be reconfigured. So when you're coming from the Richmond and you're making that left turn onto Lincoln, it'll be a much smoother left turn, double lane, two left turns at the same time, and then coming up Lincoln onto Great Highway to get into the Richmond will be a double right turn lane. So the cars should flow much better. Sunset Boulevard, lots of improvements on Sunset Boulevard, not just a repaving, but moving the bus stops to the other side of the intersection.
Oh, sure.
So if you think about it, if you're
after the light,
if you're driving behind the bus and you on the right-hand lane and you want to turn and the bus stops to unload, then you're stuck behind the bus.
Sure.
But they're moving the bus stops to the other sides for better flow. So
it's one of those little changes that can actually unlock a lot of movement.
That's right.
Yeah, so we should center for people who aren't familiar. There were a lot of concerns, right, about traffic and traffic flow with the Great Highway not accessible to cars, and how that would impact additional other neighborhoods around, and if they would see spillover traffic, and if Sunset Boulevard and Lincoln would get gummed up. I was in a Democratic Party meeting. I think, Han, you've heard of this before. I was at this meeting, but it was and Josephine Zhao was there with a number of folks saying, you're going to make our commutes tougher. I mean, can you say now definitively, will commutes for people who use the Great Highway, will they get slower?
Well, we're working on improving traffic flow. Remember that southern part of the road was closing no matter what. So we were going to have to mitigate traffic. The traffic had to move inland. So so I think it's important. It's important for West Side residents to have better traffic circulation and flow. And so we're committed to that. I'm committed to it. The mayor's committed to it, and we're working diligently to make that happen.
But does that mean, yes, there will be a bit, but it will be mitigated, or there'll be a lot, but we're working on it? Where does that fall in terms of result?
Well, where we see pain points, we're fixing those. So stop signs are being replaced with traffic signals, right? We're moving bus stops. We're doing things that traffic engineers say will help traffic flow. So I think it's important to listen to the experts and execute and try to break through bureaucratic hurdles. So you had mentioned the fentanyl emergency, which I was an early co-sponsor, right? Why are we doing that, right? Fentanyl is a crisis which requires bold and swift action. But before you do that, you need bold and swift changes to our bureaucracy that got in the way of addressing the issue. And so now a traffic signal you can't equate that to a fentanyl emergency, but underlying the concept is the same, right? If we can break through the bureaucracy to get a traffic signal up faster at 41st and Lincoln, then that means we can do other things in other parts of the city that everyone's going to benefit from. So it's a mindset, right? And that's why I'm really aligned with Mayor Lurie with that mindset of let's streamline things for whatever issue is, whatever pain point someone has, not just in the Sunset, but all over the city. That's good for San Francisco, that we can push through, make change happen faster.
Yeah, so I think traffic is one of the main concerns, and also another controversial part is building a park, right, which is not in the ballot measure, the money, and also the bike lanes, everything, right? So what's the latest on that, building the park? What's the development on that part?
Well, park, like the definition of park is kind of in the eye of the beholder. Everyone has an idea of what a park is, but one thing that really surprised me, the data I saw, was that when the Great Highway is closed on the weekends, it's just asphalt. They just put up a gate and it's just asphalt. And that had become the third most visited park in San Francisco. I was like, whoa, how is that? What, doesn't make sense. But it's what happens in the space, right? Like magical things were happening on this asphalt. And so we have to acknowledge that, right? Like people might not like it or might want to ignore it or dismiss it, but it was happening. And what's going on here? What does that mean? And so what was happening was people were able to do things at the coast that they can't do on the sand at the beach, or that they can't do in Golden Gate Park because there's no ocean view. There was just something magical about this open space with the asphalt to ride and roll, whatever age you are, with a stroller or a walker or your bike or whatever it is. People were really gravitating toward it, and to the point it was the third most visited park in San Francisco. So I think it's already successful as it is. And going forward, with community input and we can make it whatever we want it to be. It'll be an evolving process. Like this is something for the generations, right? This is the chance to create something transformational. So if we first focus on the important part, making sure people are getting where they need to go, then hopefully we can then look at all the transformational parts and the benefits that this park could bring.
So you're saying that that's going to come after the street changes are made?
Well, the street change, the road is not closing until we have these traffic signals up and running. And then, I'm sure Rec and Park, is working on like small amenities that they can open the park with. And then there'll be ongoing funding and planning questions for people to entertain as to what they want in that space.
Yeah, I am wondering, because we have a budget process coming up, and it is, through June, right? And Mayor Daniel Lurie will have his own budget proposals to the supervisors. You all have to approve it. You have you guys negotiate with the mayor's office on that final budget. Are you going to be asking for funding for this for the park itself in this budget? And is the budget crisis affecting those discussions at all?
Well, my priority, I'm on the budget committee, and also, as you know, the way the budget process works, it's the mayor's budget, and then, the board of supervisors will look at the budget legislative and analyst report to see what could be taken out, and then we kind of figure out, what can we add back in, right? So that whole process happens in June. But my priority will be to, we have some very important nonprofit, like youth services, family services in the Sunset. The Sunset is a place where there's a lot of need. People will look down a street and see a string of single-family homes, and it may seem like, those are well-resourced single-family homes, but some of those homes, or many of those homes, might have multiple generations, might have 6, 7, 9 people living in a single-family home. So we have a lot of nonprofits in the Sunset that are really focused on youth, family, seniors, to address the needs they have, and those needs are real. And oftentimes it's overlooked. The Sunset isn't really. People think of other parts of the city of having more need. So for me, a priority will be to make sure our nonprofits serving Sunset residents are going to be taken care of, because that's a basic, point of government. Right? We have to make sure that that we have police protection, fire protection, and we're taking care of our most vulnerable residents. So those are basics we have to do. So those would be my priorities.
Yeah, I want to go back to the park a little bit. So when we're talking about the park, the joy, right? A lot of the criticism about this idea is people think there is some race and class, issues behind this issue, and then there's why it's so controversial. Do you see it that way? Like, people would frame it as, the privileged work from home tech people against working class people rely on commuting, on Great Highway.
Well, I hear from a lot of people who, everybody who has an opinion on this issue, their opinion is valid because they're feeling it themselves, right? So I have to respect what people say and feel about this issue. But my experience is that those who are in favor of a park come from a wide range of backgrounds, as those who are opposed to the park. So I think it's important to talk about what are the underlying concerns, right? If it's traffic, then we're going to focus on traffic. And then if we fix the traffic issue, then we can talk about how can everyone benefit from this space, because this is a space that ultimately we're talking about opening up our coast to more people, creating more access to a precious coast that we don't have a lot of, right? And so I think it's important just to note that this is something that everybody can benefit from, and we can still get people where they need to go.
Yeah. Okay, just one reminder that we are taking questions online, so feel free to comment. So before we get to that one, maybe we're going to address a little bit about the recall too, right? So I think we talk about the traffic, park, all the controversy, right? And a lot of people think that it's beyond just one issue of the Great Highway. People feel disrespected, bypassed, betrayed, ignored, right, by this process. Do you agree? Do you agree on that kind of emotion might drive to the recall right now?
Yeah, I respect how people feel. Like, I know people feel upset about this issue. San Francisco, we have a lot of contentious issues that people are passionate and emotional and will be angry about and support or disagree with. It's just there's a lot that we have to deal with in San Francisco. So, but my goal is to find where we have common ground. So I think we can all agree that if you need to go to the VA hospital, or you need to go visit your relative, or you need to get to work or take your kid to school, we can all agree that we want to make sure that it's not an overdue burden to get there. And we want to make sure no one is cut off and people have a way and they have alternative routes or ways to get where they need to go. I think we can all agree on that. And we can also all agree that we want to make sure our pedestrians are safe, so cars aren't just cutting through local streets and when kids are trying to walk to school. We can all agree on that. So like, if we can all agree to get traffic where it needs to go and to keep pedestrians safe, let's work on that. Let's work on solving that issue. Yeah. And then we can also talk about how a park can benefit, everyone else.
And I've been noticing how you've been kind of addressing those concerns like pretty frequently. You had it in your newsletter. You had it in the Sunset Beacon. I saw you address these folks pretty directly, of like, if you feel unheard, you want to listen. I was pretty. It was interesting to see that you just kind of like went head on into those concerns.
And I'm a very responsive supervisor. I try to reply to almost every email. It's hard, but
how many text messages would you say you get on any given day?
It's more email. People are used to emailing through my website, and I have like multiple channels that comes through my website, comes through City Hall.
How many would you say you get every day?
I don't know, maybe at least 50. But I'm trying to actually reply to them and deal with their issue, or and then I copy a staff member, or if I know the answer, I'll tell them the answer. So I spend a lot of time connecting with people. Just recently, over the last 3 weeks, I visited every merchant in the Sunset. Every merchant. Like, I would spend 3 hours at a time going door to door to door to door on every corridor, Irving, Taraval, Noriega, just talking to every merchant to see what their concerns are, invite them. I invited them to, we had a merchant-only town hall about the night market, because I wanted to get input from all merchants. Like, what do you want this year for night market? Do you want to keep it on Irving? Do you want to move it to Noriega, or maybe Taraval? I don't know, but we want to get input, right? And so I've been doing everything I can to be accessible, to be responsive on all the issues people care about. Now, people may disagree with me on one issue, but I pushed for algebra in 8th grade and brought more police protection to the Sunset, helped secure additional funding for merchants who were affected by the construction on Taraval. So working to do fixing the real life problems that people have every day.
And we're going to let you talk about night market at the end, probably.
Okay.
So I think one question here is, a lot of people are asking about why not a compromise on the Great Highway, right? Like, the current pilot program, or, like another version of a compromise. Is that something, you ever consider?
Well, we have to remember this had already been on the ballot in 2022. There was a ballot measure, folks who wanted the road to be open to cars 24/7. Put their own ballot measure on the ballot in 2022, and that failed citywide. It was kind of 50-50 in the sunset. Actually, it was probably like 53-47 against having a full-time road. And then those folks then went and tried to appeal the weekend compromise, so multiple times to the Coastal Commission. So this has been a long process, right? And so there are residents in the Sunset, who were advocating for a park and felt like, well, they wanted to have more voter clarity and have their measure on the ballot. So this has been something debated for 5 years. It's been on the ballot twice. It's been appealed multiple times. It's been discussed, debated. Everybody knows where everyone stands on the issue. It's been talked about a lot.
Yeah. Another latest development is about doing business on the Great Highway, right? And I guess you read the Power Play little paragraph about, some of the merchants are asking for a full ban of business activities on the Great Highway. Will you support that?
So yeah, that's a great question because, right, as you said, there's some merchants who feel like, let's have no commercial activity, definitely no food trucks, because the fear is, right, if all these people are coming to the third most visited park in San Francisco and they just go to the food truck on the highway or on the park, then they won't come into the local businesses. That's bad, right? We don't want businesses to suffer at all, right? The whole point is we want people to come to this park and then go to the local businesses so everyone is prospering, right? So I completely understand the fear. And food trucks on a park, that's not my thing. It's nothing I'm going to fight for. But there's always differences of opinion, right? Like on anything. So, and this is a funny story because when I mentioned I walked and visited every merchant in the Sunset to invite them to that night market meeting, I went into a Chinese restaurant on Taravel, and the owner didn't speak English, spoke Cantonese, but my legislative aide was with me. She speaks Cantonese, and unprompted, because he realized I'm the city supervisor, and unprompted, his first line to me was, "Oh, city supervisor, I heard there's a new park coming out at the ocean at the Great Highway. How do I sell my food there?" I was like, wow, okay, that's interesting, right? So I was
wondering if that was going to be an effective compromise.
So we'll have to, we're going to have to get many more merchants together to kind of hammer this out, right? So maybe the answer is a policy. Like, for instance, we have, it's become an institution now. I think it's in the third year, going on fourth year, the Great Hauntway, where thousands of families come out on the Sunday before Halloween. So it's a daytime activity, and all the kids are dressed up, and we're handing out candy to all the. So like, I don't want to ban handing out candy to thousands of families on right. So like, we need to figure this out. There's not going to be some.
You imagine the backlash to that,
right? So there's got to but nothing is happening now. Like, there are no food trucks coming. There's nothing, So but this is a very important question, because whatever we do, whether it's night market or what everything has to be centered on benefiting the local businesses.
So you are pursuing a way to allow the local businesses to sell food?
No. I'm saying we're doing nothing. Nothing is happening, but there is a concern about local businesses. If there's commercial activity, will it negatively affect their business? And we want to make sure that no one is negatively affected.
Sure, but what did you say to that merchant who asked you, how can I sell my food out?
I said, we don't know yet. This is unclear. Stay tuned.
Okay. All right.
You just had a town hall meeting about the, people's opinion about night markets right, this year. And is there ever anybody mentioned the possibility of having a night market on Great Highway?
I think for now that there's at least, I don't think no one wants to put a night market on the Great Highway because we want to focus on our merchant corridors. We've had it on Irving 3 times now, and now we need to decide: do we keep it there? Do we move it somewhere else? Another corridor. Each corridor has its challenges and benefits, right? Terraville obviously has a train we have to deal with, So. We'll see, but we wanted to get a lot of input from all the merchants and also the night markets. Remember, like when we did it in 2023, it hadn't really been done before in San Francisco, at least at that scale. And so it was so new, and it was kind of, you had to iterate, and what worked. I mean, a lot of things didn't work, a lot of things worked, and each time we do it, we learn and improve. And now night market fever, they're all over the city, which is fantastic, right? And so each night market in different parts of the city are probably evolving to their own neighborhood or what works for them, right? There's no one size fits all solution for night markets.
So the Sunset's a bit of a trendsetter.
Yes.
I don't think I ever would have. I grew up in the city. I don't think growing up in the city I ever would have thought of the Sunset as a
All of a
trendsetter.
sudden, the Sunset's so cool right now.
Yeah, geez. Yeah. It was more the sleepy Sunset. Like, what do you do there? I go to Stonestown, I guess.
No, Sunset's where it's at. You got to. Yeah, there's so many destination restaurants.
All right.
Do you know about Smoking D's?
What?
Smoking D's. It's on Irving Street.
Right.
It's quintessential San Francisco. It's a husband and wife owned restaurant, and the husband's from Texas, so he knows barbecue, and the wife is Chinese.
Barbecue.
And so they marry, literally and figuratively marry the two foods. So you can go get a bun full of Texas barbecue, and
Was that in your newsletter and I missed it?
and it's coming up. It's going to be in the next issue, but it sells out. Like, you got to get, like, if you don't get there by a certain hour, they're sold out. You know, so, and they started in the night market.
Oh, interesting.
So they actually started with the farmers market that we have, the wonderful, the Sunset Mercantile. There's this great farmers market up, on 37th Avenue. So this couple, they started just selling their food at the farmers market. Then they graduated to the night market and had a huge success. And now they're a brick and mortar on Irving Street. So, like, we want to encourage people with innovation, people who have great ideas, people who have good products to, like, show the world, like, bring them to the Sunset. So we attract more people out to the Sunset to see all the great things that already exist in the Sunset.
The Sunset success story.
There you go.
That's
yes.
sweet.
And Sunset just had a new cookie store opened. Yeah.
Crumble, right, in the Shore
Mayor
Plaza.
Daniel,
That's right. Mayor Lurie was there on opening day. And there was a line of hundreds. Well, I think all the Lowell kids got out of school and then showed up for the free cookie on opening day. So there's probably 400 people in line outside.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, another question is about Coastal Commission, right? So people are thinking about, have you been working on this for a while before you tell the public?
So the coastal, well, I mean,
with the Coastal Commission,
this issue had been in the public for 5 years, and then there was Prop I in 2022, and then multiple appeals to the Coastal Commission. So I went to some of those appeals to argue against the appeal, to say, no, we shouldn't kill the weekends, like that was, so this had been going on for 18 months of my first 18 months was this constant churn of appeal. And so the final appeal was probably in April or May of last year, and then Prop K was put on the ballot in June.
Okay. And I think next week will be your campaign kickoff, right? Anti-recall campaign kickoff.
Oh,
Saturday.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
How's that? Who's going to be there?
Well, a lot of residents of the Sunset. Like I hear from a lot of Sunset residents who were no on K, but they don't agree with the recall. They feel like one issue doesn't warrant a recall, and they like a lot of the other things that I've done and I'm continuing to do. There was a letter to the editor in the Chronicle just this week from a resident of the Sunset, and she had said, I've been here more than 50 years, and I was no on K, but I really like our supervisor. He's done so much. I haven't seen it. I mean, it's rare to see such a responsive supervisor. So it was nice to see, like, I hear from a lot of residents who are saying that. There was a letter in the West Side Observer, a small kind of neighborhoody newspaper, and the woman said, I was no on K, but then over the holidays she read a book about the environment, and then she changed her mind, and in her letter she's like, I realized this is partly an environmental issue. Actually, I was no on K, but I think this will be good for the environment. So folks like that will be there, So I think it's important to look at somebody's whole track record, their entire body of work. We are going we can't agree 100% of the time on 100% of the issues. That's impossible, right? So if we disagree on one issue, we can be respectful, we can find common ground, kind of dig down to what is the root concern, address that concern together, and then move on, all right? And then work together on all the other issues that are happening, you know? And so my staff, like, we're very responsive. Like, there are people who do want to recall me, but they still might have a pothole or some problem at their house, and so we are on it. I don't care if you're pro-recall or anti-recall, we are going to fix your issue, because that's my job, right? And so it's just important just to keep doing my job. That's my best defense. I'm going to keep doing the work I've always been doing and serving the sunset.
Yeah, even Supervisor Marr, arguably was ousted over a chief issue being the not supporting the Boudin recall, which you hammered him on pretty heavily during the campaign. But he lost during he lost during an election, not a recall.
Right, and I'm up for election in 2026, in I guess a year and a half from now or so, and so that's democracy. And people have the right to recall. That's part of our democracy too. And I'll be up for election next year.
Yeah. Speaking of the recall, and I'm seeing some chatter on Nextdoor. Some folks wondering about your supporters, the funding supporters of your defense of the recall. I think they were calling out some folks like Jeremy Stoppelman, who isn't in the district, is in District 2. I think Pack Heights contributed maybe about to $25K, I believe, and is a kind of a self-avowed YIMBY. What would you say to D4 residents about getting large financial support from people outside the district? What does that mean? And do you appreciate that help? How do you view that help?
Well, we have a lot of grassroots donors. All of our donations are public. sfethics.org. I encourage everyone, not just if you're interested in my situation, but go to sfethics.org to look at everybody, right? And look at your own supervisor, look at anyone you're interested in, any campaign. Like SF Ethics does an amazing job of showing where all the money comes from. Everything is very public, so you will know exactly who is giving what to who, and you can spend a lot of time just perusing around.
And we do.
Yes, and that's wonderful.
I mean, we're paid to, but
yeah. And I used to be a journalist, so I understand the need for transparency. And so everything that my campaign is spending is completely transparent. We have a lot of grassroots donors, probably $17,000, $18,000 in grassroots donations that are posted on sfethics.org. So it's all there for everyone to see.
Sure.
Yeah, but sorry, but the big money seems to be on your side, right?
Well, I mean, the other side, the other side, I'm sure, is trying to fund their campaign too. So again, it'll all be it's all publicly disclosed. So everyone can take a look at who's giving to what, and it's all out in the open.
Do you have a few more questions, or may I ask something a little philosophical, you think?
Yeah. Go
Okay, all right. This occurs to me with the Great Highway thing. So I was talking to my mother's partner. Love the guy. He's basically like a father to me, and grew up with him. And he grew up in the Mission. And I was talking to him about the Great Highway, and he was telling me, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, man, Joe, when I was growing up in the Mission, there's cars everywhere. You're working on your car in your driveway. A car meant freedom. And when I was a teenager, like driving down the Great Highway, the wind coming through, and enjoying the sunset was what freedom was to me. We talked a lot about brass tacks around this, but to what degree do you feel like this anger, this kind of vitriol is somewhat because of people's identities are tied up in this? There's like a feeling about car ownership and a feeling about driving that is being threatened a little bit.
I know about driving. I'm from Michigan. I grew up in a General Motors factory town, Saginaw, Michigan. And Saginaw is not as famous as Flint. Flint, everybody knows, and that's about 30 miles south. But Saginaw was everything Flint was, but just not as known. And so I understand the car culture. The day I turned 16, I got my driver's license and freedom, right? And I learned how to change my own oil and do all this. I know.
More than me. I grew up on
I know car culture, right? It's as American as apple pie and see the USA in your Chevrolet, right? I get it. And I talked to a guy when I was walking the Sunset, talking to all the merchants. A guy stopped me in one of the stores and said, "Oh, Supervisor, like all the work you're doing." And he was no on K, but he was like, very friendly and liked all the work I was doing. But he did make to your point, he says, and he was probably in his early 70s, and he said, when I was a teenager, we would drag race on the Great Highway. Because back then, in the 1970s, there were no stoplights.
Right.
It was just 2 miles. Like, they actually put in the stoplights because some people got killed, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
But the point is, like, in his mind, his teenage youth, right, was about drag racing on Great Highway. So I get it. He's like, that's my memories. That's my...
It's like fundamental to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But ultimately, too, like, he's not drag racing anymore in his 70s. And I think we had a long conversation, and he did come to realization, well, my grandkids, like, the environment, like things change, and like this might be a good thing, because even if we're not drag racing anymore, like we'll still be able to get where we need to go. You can still go. There's no one's being cut off from anywhere. There's other roads that we can take, and we're making those improvements. And so I think he kind of came to that realization. But it's a good point, and that's something we connected on. And I talked about my car background, and he talked about his car background, and we found common ground. And then we talked about the future and like how things change, and sometimes we have to adapt. But we can make sure that no one's going to be harmed when we adapt to what we need to do for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe last question, what are we going to expect from this year's night market?
Oh, yes, I'm excited.
Part,
yeah, well, we're trying to figure that out, right? We want to, and it's hard, like when the first one we did, we had 10,000 people come, and then we did it last year, then 20,000 people came, and we had stinky tofu eating contests, which I know you were part of.
I'm a proud third place winner.
Wow,
right, that's right.
Pretty good.
And then after that, we did the second night market, another 20,000 people came, and then I was like, we can't repeat stinky tofu, and then someone said, let's do durian eating, and that was a big hit. Now I was like, what do we do next? I don't know, but that's the fun part. We're gonna like sit down and figure it out and take all this input from the merchants, from the community, because like now we know people love the night market. It brings joy. Families love it, and we want to continue that. We should be in the business of creating more joy in San Francisco. We need it, and so that is one of my goals.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Supervisor, and thanks to all the online viewers having all the debate here. And I'll see you all next time. Thank you.